Hey guys, I'm so grateful you're joining today for this fun episode to talk about three great ways to date one another. We all need this. We all need these reminders during this month, but always where we're talking and learning about how to sharpen our intimacy skills and really, of course, soften our intimacy ultimately. But really, Tracy is going to take us on a journey today of the three important elements of a date. And I really loved hearing these. And I think it's going to be one of those hacks that I remember for my whole life because I'm like, oh, this is good stuff. And we troubleshooted on this episode with you and for you because we're in the real thick of it with you. And so I'm like, Tracy, like, you've got to tell us how to get through the hard seasons where we're too tired to take dates or we don't have opportunities. And Tracy really encourages and refreshes us. So I really am thankful for that. And this is because Tracy works with Restory counseling. She's had a long 30+ year marriage and has learned how to shine with her husband as well as to walk through shadows. And she knows what it's like to have just this much, just a little bit. If you're not watching on our Lavender Haze YouTube channel, then I'm just making this tiny little, like, you have nothing to give kind of the look for you so that you know we get it if you're in that space today. But thank you. Thank you for being here. Tracy has so many giftings on helping people to restore, to find purpose, even when hope is very low. And if you're there today, please just lean in extra with us because we want this to be a soft holding environment for you so that you feel like, okay, I can bring my emotional load. I can get tips. I can also feel like I'm connecting with people who get it. That's the journey we're on with you today. And that's the journey we want you to have today. So I can't wait. I'm like so tempted to share what these three elements are that I pretty much just have to bring her on. But know that you're in for a treat. So sit back and relax, have coffee with us, whatever you're doing. We're so glad you're joining us today. And let's bring Tracy on. Tracy, thank you so much for coming to the E&M podcast.
Oh, well, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here and for our conversation.
Me too. It couldn't be more timely. I was just
Mhm.
talking to a couple right before we got on about how important the narrative and the story is. So we are all in.
Good, good. Sounds like perfect timing.
Oh, so critical. So tell us more about yourself and the heart of Restory. You have such a fascinating beginning, and I would just love for our listeners and my friends here in the E&M community to just hear about how you've been able to walk through this, and of course, some Enneagram too.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, I mean, a little bit about me. I came into understanding that story work was important and that actually the story of your life mattered when my husband and I were pastoring young adults. So that was about, gosh, 25 years ago or so.
Mm-hmm.
And I got introduced to a ministry that really valued the importance of story, and that had never been something up to that point. All the years of ministry that we've been in, I just never heard anybody say this really matters. And so I started taking a look at my own story and discovering things that had been buried and forgotten and just kind of put away. And that was sort of my introduction to it. And found that for me, it was so life giving and changed my relationship with my husband, my relationship with myself, changed my relationship with God. Sort of all of the things were
Mm-hmm.
impacted by that shift in thinking about and coming to believe that the story that you've lived really matters and that God has something like woven of himself through that and woven for you, to discover in that. So that kind of set me on a trajectory to do a lot of my own work. And in the course of that, discovered that not only did I love it for what I was discovering for myself, but I found a real calling and sort of a niche of the way that God has made me and gifted me. Really having an outlet, in that world and in that work.
Oh,
So yeah, it was really beautiful. I mean, transformative for me personally, and then also just sort of as far as the work and what I would come to bring to the world out of that. So that's like a brief kind of, how did I come into this? And then I met Chris Bruno
mm-hmm.
actually through his wife. So I have another piece of what I do just for women that's called Red Tent Living. It's
Yeah,
an
I saw that. It's
both
beautiful.
an online community and has aspects of it that include dinners for women that are themed and are story driven. And we have a website for women to submit stories. And that Chris's wife started writing for me almost a decade ago, I guess about 7 years ago.
Wow.
And through her, Chris and I got connected, and that brought me into, the family of Restory counseling and
Mhm.
the work that they do. So
Beautiful. Thank you for
yeah.
being open-hearted to tell us, hey, this was a personal story that then I
Oh
felt
yeah.
driven.
Yes.
I think those are the best outreaches is when somebody puts their heart in it and says, like, this is really everything I have to give and I must share it with others. So we are
Yeah.
so thankful. And
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about your Enneagram type and a little bit
Mhm.
about your own marriage.
Yeah. So I'm an Enneagram 8. Um, and
Love that.
yeah, and I'm married to an Enneagram 7. So my husband Mark is a 7, and
Mhm.
that makes for a lot of energy and a
Yeah.
lot. We bring like a sort of a force. We bring
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
lot of ourselves
Yeah.
to what we do.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we
for
call
sure.
that pairing love in motion because we
Yes.
know that that pairing is moving and
Yeah.
shaking and so I
Yeah.
love that you're kind of giving our audience just a visual of there's a lot there and it's
There's a lot
beautiful and then
there.
there's going to be some combustion and two
All of those.
assertive independent types together. This is beautiful. And how did you guys meet?
Yeah, that's a great question. So Mark and I met actually working for a an airline that isn't in existence anymore because it got gobbled up.
Oh, okay.
But we met working for America West Airlines, and
Mhm.
I was 21. Mark was 25. He had been there for longer than I had, and we met on the opposite side of an airplane one day. So I tell
Gosh, you met
people
in the
it
sky.
is a fun. My kids love to tell the story, so it is a fun story. But what I would say about Mark is that for me, I grew up in a Christian home that was a very careful home. That would be part of how I would describe it. I've told people before it feels like I grew up in a Norman Rockwell painting,
Yeah.
and so you can imagine with like my 8 and all of what I sort of bring to the world that in my family, I was probably the most angry and had the most things to say and had the most energy.
Yeah.
And that left me feeling really, really kind of too big and too much
Yeah.
inside my family of origin.
So much sense.
Yeah. And so when I met Mark, what I tell people is like, Mark felt like life to me.
Yeah, oh my gosh, I
Right.
love
So
that.
all of that, all of his 7 energy, and he has big 7 energy, like loves to travel, loves to
Mhm.
plan big things, loves to have big conversations, like, and whatever the next thing is. So he's so classically 7. And for me, that just felt like oxygen.
Mm.
Felt like oxygen. And it was, he was one of the first people that I didn't feel like I was too big or too much for Mark.
That's
So
amazing. What I know our eights are just like frothing at the mouth of like, yes.
yeah,
That's so cool.
yeah,
And I love that your kids can tell the stories too of like
yeah,
how you guys really needed to find one another to find that validation of like your soul validation.
yeah. That feels really true. That feels really true.
Mm.
And it has been combustible. So, it is both. But for me, even in that, I think that even some of that combustion is feels like life to me. So, I need some of that intensity to feel like we're going somewhere, something is happening. So we've been
Mm.
married like over 35 years. So at this point, it's not as combustible
Yeah.
for good reasons, right?
Yeah, I get
Relaxed
that.
a little bit, like
Yeah.
I've relaxed a little bit,
Yeah. Yeah.
sort of settled into my bigness and settled into what
Mhm.
makes me strong and what makes me tender.
Mhm.
And so today I would say like, yes, Mark feels like life for me.
Yeah.
And I've learned to rest in who
Mm.
he is and learn to rest in what it is, that he brings so that everything doesn't have to always have so much intensity to it.
Oh, that's really important. I'm glad that you're letting us see that, giving us a peek ahead for those who are the young marrieds listening, that
Yeah,
it takes time for these
it
things to
does.
saturate. And eights are reactivity types. And so you're like,
Mhm.
there's even a part of me that when we do come together with intensity, I need to see that that's the way I show care. And I
Right.
need to know I'm cared about and that he can meet me there. So there's probably
Yeah.
been times I can imagine as a fellow 7 from his side that he has to be brave to lean in and to do
Yes.
the work of staying and
Yeah.
allowing these conversations to happen. And that, like you said, you also have to learn it's okay to let them rest sometimes. And there's this balancing that kind of occurs imperfectly, but it does occur over
Yeah.
time. And I would imagine storytelling has been part of it.
It has been part of it. And I think, part of what I've needed to learn from Mark and have come to appreciate about him is that he's very playful.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
that would not have been a word I would ever use to have described myself. And so that rest from that intensity can come in play, which, feels life-giving, but is also not fraught with so much heaviness and sort of that combustibility or
Mm,
whatever. So I think that has been good, and it's been good for me to stretch and grow and know
mm,
that what how he feels cared for is lighter. It's not
mm.
fluffy, but it has a different aspect to it. And so for him to feel care, I need to lay down some of that, like pushing and bantering back and forth
Mm.
that can feel life-giving to me, but can feel exhausting for him.
Yeah, yeah. I love that you're trying to do that work ongoing, that you're
Yeah.
saying, "Oh, I need to
Oh
remember
yeah.
that narrative of he brings in this aspect, I bring that in," but when we feel that the other one is being maybe, too playful, I'm thinking of a Walter Mitty quote when he's, like, upset
Yeah.
and he's like, "Too playful," or,
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
the other end, when it's like, "Okay, no, this is too intense," you guys
Right.
can remember, "Okay, I bring a different gift, and
Yeah.
that's okay," and that's neat that you're able to see yourself grow and stretch in that way over the years.
Yeah, and it feels important. I think Mark invites me to play, and I think I invite
Mm.
him to stay. And so
Yeah.
that's a good
Ooh.
when we can stay and play together,
Yeah,
that's beautiful.
that's a beautiful that needs to be the subtitle of that pairing.
Yes, stay and
Long-term
play.
growth. Stay in play. Thank you, 8s and 7s listening together. This is your homework.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so beautiful. Well, we're so grateful that we get to learn how to do some of actually that today as we talk about
Yeah.
dates together, because I'm noticing in my work that a lot of the time for people to really draw into intimacy together, they're really benefiting when they've had some time to connect with their special dates. And we just did a
Yeah.
post series on this on Instagram and we talk about it a lot. Tell us about why dates are so important for couples, even when we're sometimes like, we don't need dates. What do you feel like dates can do?
So I think that we need to continue to date. And I think that dating in one sense is like it kind of pulls you out of sort of the cul-de-sac that you we can find ourselves sort of riding around in, where things are just it just becomes the same and it just becomes sort of rote. And I would say it becomes this place kind of resignation in marriage.
Mm,
When we kind of reach the place where it feels like we've stopped dating, I think we've started to live into a space of resignation, like, well, this is just as good as it gets.
mm,
I guess this is all that there is.
mm.
And so I think that dating is like an opportunity to exit the cul-de-sac
Yeah.
and remember that we're never done. To like I said, Mark and I've been married over 35 years, and I am still learning things about him. I'm
Oh,
not done. For all that I think that I know, he is still continuing to change and to
mhm.
grow, and I'm continuing to change and to
Precious.
grow. Right? I still have untold stories, and so does he. And we're writing a new story together. So
Mhm.
I
Wow.
think dating, right, gives us this opportunity to kind of continue to live into that and live into that reality that I don't know everything about you and I don't know everything about us,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Oh my gosh, that
So
is so I love how we're weaving story in because you're reminding us of those John Gottman sort of love maps. Like we do not
right,
know one another ongoing because we keep changing. And so you're inviting us into keep learning about each other, which I think is so beautiful and such a oxygenation for our marriages.
thanks. Yeah. I think the perspective that Chris and I come at this with, like in our Thrive Marriage Lab and in our like a year of good dates,
Mm.
has these components that there's got to be delight and there needs to be story and there needs to be attunement. And
Ooh.
so, like in our dates, we want you to find some sort of delight that's coming from the activity that you're doing together. So it should be enjoyable, right? And
Mm.
not just enjoyable, but oh my gosh, this was delightful, and we're delighting in it together.
Mm,
And
yeah.
and then that we're going to discover things about one another, and we do that by their every date has a storied component to it, so that
Mm.
we're curating and cultivating the idea that we're not done, right?
Mm.
I don't know everything there is to know about you. And
Mm.
then the third thing that needs to happen in a good date is that there's some connection that's happening because we're tuning in to one another.
Mm.
So, you know, a good date, it's not that a good date couldn't include some of the typical things that we like to do. Like Mark and I are going on a date. We planned a date today. We're gonna go see the newest Mission Impossible movie, and then we're gonna grab dinner afterwards,
Yeah.
right?
So
And
fun.
so that's kind of typical date, right? Let's
Yeah.
go to dinner and a movie.
Yeah.
That's fine, but if that's all that we do, we might enjoy the movie. We might have some delight in that activity together, and we
Mhm.
might have some enjoyment of dinner. But if we're not intentional, right,
Mhm.
we probably won't have a meaningful conversation,
Yeah.
right? And we probably won't tune into one another.
Mm. Okay.
So when I think about some of the decisions we made about the date today, Mark said something about it yesterday. He's
Yeah.
like, "We need to go to Mission Impossible. Should we take the kids with us?" And I said, we haven't taken. We still have two at home.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
um, so I said, we haven't taken the kids with us to one yet. That will change the dynamic. Do we want to take the kids? And he's like, "No, I don't want to take the kids."
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so now it's a date, because if we're bringing the kids, it's not a date. It's a
Yeah.
family activity.
Yeah.
You know, so that much, that's just a little piece of what's making it intentional for us tonight. And,
Mhm.
how we're going and when we're going and why we're going, kind of all of those questions.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
I think a lot of couples, when we say that, it can feel like a lot of work to kind of bring that intentionality. And a lot of us, I think we're tired, right? A date should be something that's enjoyable. I don't want to sit around and have to figure out on my own, how to do this differently every month.
Yeah.
And so we've curated 12 months of that includes a
Mm.
lot of different things, right? That your date can be about. And so,
Mm.
in our list of things you can do, we've got dates that are activity driven. And so we're asking the spouse who's sort of planning the date to think of an activity that they want to do, what's something that they want to do. And then we're inviting them to think about, what's the story? What is the story that goes with why this is the activity that you want to do? Is this an
Mm.
activity that, like, you did when you were a kid and it was super fun? Or is it something that you always wanted to do? Or you have a particular memory, about doing this, or a particular story around why you've always wanted to do this, whatever that is, right? And so we help you kind of sit down and think about that.
Mm.
And we ask you to, like, how do you want to invite your spouse into that?
Yeah.
And then for the spouse that's being invited in, it's their job to then sort of connect with that story and tune in to what their spouse is sharing with them as
Mm.
part of why we're doing the date. So now you've got all of these components, right? This date has somehow it's become more meaningful, because you're going to do something together. You're going to have some sort of activity,
Mhm.
but you're also going to learn something about your spouse. You're going to tell a story, and the spouse that's hearing the story is going to ask some particular questions to sort of walk into that story a little bit deeper,
Mm.
so that you end up feeling like you know more about your spouse at the
Mm.
end, and you've cemented it, right? Because you've also done something together that has been a lot of fun
Mm.
around. So
Now,
then
yeah.
you can still go on your movie
Mhm.
and dinner, or go grab coffee, or whatever dates, but at least once a month
Yeah.
you're going to do it. You're going to have a date that's got a little more substance to it.
Okay. So, now will we tell the story before the dates? Is that what you recommend? Like, I'd love to go on this date with you because this is a meaningful, we've watched Mission Impossible together. I hear some of that in your
Mhm.
narrative. Or do you think, no, it's fun to do it while you're on the date, or a little bit of
Yeah,
both?
I think you could do both. I think there's a lot of freedom inside of that.
Mm.
Whether you're going to tell ahead of time, this is why I picked this activity, or this is, why we're going to do this thing, or if you do it as part of the date.
Yeah.
I think it could go either way.
I
I
like
think,
that, and I think you're right, just being natural with it, and then,
yeah.
what about, like, when spouses are kind of trying to decide who gets to pick which story. Is it kind of lined up like
Yeah.
that with?
Well, yeah, I think that's a great question. So you get, the couple is gonna get, if you do this 12 dates with us, you get it delivered to you, right? And I think you can kind of look at it and go, which one of us should plan this one, right? If it's kind of a foodie date, and that's what we've set up, is one
Yeah.
of you more or other
Mhm.
of that way. If it's sort of
Mhm.
a playful date, so I think that becomes part of it too, is even in this sort of selecting, like, who's going to kind of take ownership over this
Yeah.
and be the
Yes.
one, right, to kind of plan it. And then I think you start getting into, even in that, where you're learning more about one another, but also doing that work. And I think this is important for couples too, of like just honoring what is true about your spouse. Like I said about Mark and I, like, he invites me to play.
Yeah.
Play is hard. Like, it takes a lot of energy. If you tell me, is Chris, Beth and Chris and I were sort of planning these dates, we were working on this, and the ones about play came up, and I can still feel it's like, like, I don't even know what it,
Yeah.
like, playful, right? I
Yeah.
love to be invited to play. I would
Yeah.
totally hand that off to Mark and be like, hey, this one's for you. You
Yeah.
can plan this.
Yes.
I will come along,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Like
Um,
that. Yeah, and I like how you're stepping into my world with couples that
yeah,
are conflicted every week, and I know you have this too, and they're telling each other one of the reasons we got off course or off the storyline or flipped the script was because you stopped planning dates or
yeah,
you stopped showing me that you cared.
yes,
And it isn't that that person needs to plan every date you ever have, or
no,
it's 12. It's that you're inviting people into finding the special niches they each bring. And oh yeah, that one goes with me here, and there might be some dates you plan, but what you're saying to all of us is remember this thread line or this through line of delighting and then
yeah,
being able to have this moment where we are storytelling and then we're coming into connection. So,
right.
how do you feel like we can delight if we're like, I'm in a slump, I'm in this 4-week cycle as a woman, and I'm in my lower moment? Is there just maybe more simpler dates in those moments?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably a both and, Krista. I think there can be sort of this bigger, but I hear you saying, what about when it's just something simpler that's needed? And I would say, I think that the components of what we're talking about, as
Yeah.
far as like what you would include in a date,
Yeah.
I think that applies even to something that is simpler. Because really what we're talking about is like, how do we experience connection with a spouse, right? How do we build that? What are the key components to that?
Mhm.
And in the realm of like a date shouldn't be what we go on to have a hard conversation,
Mhm. Agreed. Mhm.
right? I mean, and sometimes we need to have a
We
hard
need
conversation,
those, but not on dates.
right? But when we're thinking about a date, I think a date, even when that you're just planning yourself, if you want the end goal is that we want to feel connected. We want to
Mm.
feel more connected,
Yeah.
and we want to feel something good about this relationship that we're in with one another when we get to the other side of this. So what needs to be included? There needs to be some element of delight. There's something that we're going to do together. And if you're in a slump, you're kind of feeling low. This makes me think about something that Mark used to do for me. I can remember the first time I was low. We had actually had some conflict, but I think we had tried to resolve it as best as we could, our young married selves. And he's
Yeah.
like, "I want you to get in the car. We're going somewhere."
Mhm.
I remember feeling resistant, right? But we got in the car and we drove to Dairy Queen. And we sat in the car. We sat through the drive-through because I'm like, I'm not going into Dairy Queen,
Right.
right? And he ordered this blizzard with Heath bars and Reese's peanut butter cups in it, and like this
Oh.
giant blizzard. And we sat in the car, and he had driven us where we were actually across from the high school that he went to. We were living in the city that he grew up in at the
Oh.
time. And he
Yeah.
said, I used to do this when I felt sad when I was a kid. And so I thought maybe we could do this today, and it might help you feel more hopeful about where we are and that everything is going to be okay.
Ooh, I like that. He weaved the
Right?
story in. He
It
delivered
was
the
so simple,
sentence. Oh,
right? It was
simply.
simple, right? It
Oh.
was simple. And he dug for something, right,
Mm.
that had been meaningful to him.
Yeah.
And so that became something for us, right? Like going to get ice cream. I've never been to Dairy Queen. My
Yeah.
parents, we didn't do Dairy Queen. We
Yeah.
went to Baskin and Robbins. That
Yeah.
was what we did when
Yeah.
I was a kid.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like to this day, Like my memories of Dairy Queen are all connected to my husband. And I
Oh.
don't even know that we've ordered a different kind of a blizzard in 36 years.
That's great. I love that.
Right. Because that's what we do. But that's simple. Right. But it
Yeah.
did have this moment where he was both seeing me, right? So he was attuning to me and what I was needing.
Mm.
He brought something delightful, and it included a meaningful piece of like why he had chosen that was because that was where he went when he was a kid.
Okay, so it's not so formulaic that the connection just happens on its own. It comes through these first two elements of intentionally
Yeah, I think
bringing
so.
light to one another and intentionally choosing healthy narratives to
Right.
tell. And I feel it with you guys. I'm on that ride with you where I'm like, oh, now you're just, there's more peace, there's more hope.
Right.
Um, hmm,
Right. Right.
lovely. Oh, I
Right.
love that. And I was thinking about all the different instincts we have, but I feel like you've kind of helped us to see, yeah, like if you're in a tired space or you're in a social space or this time you're not, that we can ebb and flow with that and balance. But I guess the question I'm sort of wondering now is, what if we're both in a tired space? What if we hit this date night and this happened to us so many times with little kids, and I'm sure you too, where you're like, we've got it on the calendar, we finally got the moment to sit or whatever the momentum still sometimes happens where we're just tired now. And so how can we maybe lean into even those moments when we're just like, I don't know how to bring you delight. I'm just tired.
I think that's such a great question. And I think that to me starts to feel like, even when we're really tired, it doesn't have to take a ton of energy to co-create together. And I think that that's what we're meant to do. I think
Mhm.
I think God made us to co-create with him, but I
Mhm.
think ultimately in marriage, what we're doing is co-creating. And so when I think like you're both really low, I mean, and I tell couples this, it's like neither one of you has the energy to sort of reach over and pull the other one out. It's almost like you almost just have to grab onto one another and go, okay, like, what do we need?
Mm.
We're both exhausted,
Yeah.
right? We got the sitter, and that's about all we could do, you
Mhm.
know?
Mhm.
And then I think if you're going to co-create together, it's like, what little snippet of generosity do you have for the other person?
Yeah.
And it's okay if it's not very much. It's like, okay, we got out of the house, like maybe all we can do is get ourselves to Taco Bell and order off, the dollar menu.
Yes. Yeah.
That may be all we have for the night,
Yeah.
right? And
Mhm.
can that be okay? I think in Gottman language, I think about, what we're really saying is like the fact that you got the sitter and got out the door, there's a bid for connection.
Yeah. Yep. I think so
And
too. And we can choose to see that as a bid for connection. And that's got to be
right.
a choice. That's got to be
It
the
does.
narrative.
It does. It does.
Mm. That is so good. So real. Thank you. We just love to
Yeah.
be real on this
Yeah.
podcast. We love to dig and get grimy and just admit that sometimes we're in those spaces where we don't have anything left. More
Yeah.
than we would like to, especially like those of us who move either in the tired space in the withdrawing stance, 4, 5, or 9, or the ones of us in the aggressive, assertive stance, the 3, 7s, and 8s. I think we're all like, I'm tired because I've either overdone or underdone. And then thankfully for our 1s, 2s, and 6s who are here for the ride. But
Right.
like even they occasionally hit the walls. Like I'm tired of planning or I'm tired of being always agreeable. So you're just helping us to see like in those moments, remember the bids for connection of even like, thank you for getting a sitter. Even if
Yeah.
it's just in your head, like you
Right.
got the sitter, so I'm going to make it a point to be extra nice. Or I got the sitter, but here my spouse who is tired all day working came. I remember when Wes was in medical school and he would be so tired that he would practically sleep through our dates. But I was just like, I'm just happy you're here. Like, just hop in. I will drive you around while we just listen to music. And of course, then you have to find the music that you both agree on. And
Right.
that's doable too, even if it's the one same song. So,
And I hear you choosing, right? It's like I do think that there's something, and again, we're back to it's a date,
yeah.
right? And I think it can happen at any age, but I feel us sort of talking about, when you're young and you have kids and you're in the weeds with your kids and you're
Yeah.
trying to build your career or you're still in med school or whatever that's looking like and you're just feeling really thin.
Mm.
uh, finding moments to connect both over conversations that are maybe hard and need to happen and spaces of delight, like you're thin because it doesn't feel like there's a lot of that
Yeah.
is available.
Mm.
And I think so often date nights become the space where we decide to unload all of what's been building up in us. And
Mhm.
then that's not very fun. Who wants to get a sitter and go do that?
Right. Right. And once in a while we have to, but I really agree with you. And I want to just enunciate that. Just
Yeah.
blow up what she said, guys, that you don't want to use your precious date nights for that most of the time. These coupon conversations, as we call them here, just
Yes.
need to happen in different moments and spaces whenever possible, because this is a
Right.
gift that will allow you to recharge so that you can have those conversations.
Right.
But thank you for just reminding those in those spaces or in the perimenopausal, menopausal years, wherever
Wherever.
they're at, there's sometimes just these tired spaces that we don't have as much energy as we once did or as we typically did. So thank you for giving us permission. I think some of us really needed to hear that today, myself included, that it's worth it to bid for attention even on those low energy days.
Oh, for sure. For
Mhm.
sure. And I think that like that slow, steady tending,
Yeah.
sometimes we're in seasons when that's just all I can do.
Mm.
You
Yeah.
know, all
Yeah.
you can do is the slow, steady tending. And so, Chris and I talk about that we believe a thriving marriage is meant to build a house of belonging. And belonging is really tied to like you get to be who you are and where you are, right? You don't have to change. You don't have to be something different or generate something different in order for there to be belonging, right, between you and me. And I think that's part of what you're naming too, is that like if your marriage is going to be a house of belonging, then there has to be space, right, for you to just be where you are, and that be okay, that you're not having to generate something different,
Yeah.
not even having to generate something different to make this date night happen.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I don't have it,
Mm.
right? But at the same time, it's relational, right? And so when your tiredness or your thinness is feeling like it's taking you out of connection, I think the question is like, what's the smallest thing you can do to turn your face back
Mm.
towards your spouse? What can you do to just turn your face back?
Yeah.
And what is the small yes you can bring? Doesn't have to be a big yes, but
Yeah.
what's a small yes that you can bring?
I love that. Yeah. And even your Enneagram type might be something you can bring in here where you think, okay, I
Yes,
have a bit of joy to give, or I have a bit of
right.
creativity or generosity and these
Well, and I
simple
think
things.
remembering that about your spouse,
Mm.
right? I think at that moment, like I need to remember what I can bring, but I think also I need to remember what my spouse is bringing. I need to remember like what is the goodness of what my spouse is bringing. And so, even when I'm experiencing sort of, the less enjoyable side,
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
right? And am I open to receive it? Because if I am uh if I am in sort of, tired, negative, tight space,
Yeah.
and Mark is inviting some play, and it doesn't even have to be big, like
Yeah.
I have to choose whether I'm going to receive that or not.
Mhm. Yeah. Hmm. You're right. And that's every listener needs to feel that empowerment that they can make choices because I know that's actually my type. I talk about the story all the time, but my type 8 dad loved chess and he's passed now,
Mm,
but he taught me how to live so well in that way to say,
mm,
even if you think, and my brother recently said this too, who's like a chess master. I said, what is the best kind of chess lessons to both of them for life? And they said, there's always a move that you can
right.
still play even when you think you've been beat. And that's what you're telling us is if in your
Yeah.
marriage, you're like, I don't have any plays left. There's always a move you can make, even if it's just one small move. And I love that you're even reminding myself of that. Like, don't forget your spouse's gifts. Don't forget their battles so that you can come toward them with more compassion. And like you said, sometimes they're specifically inviting you into the best they have to offer. And you could
Right.
either choose to say, no, I want the gifts of some other type or my own better. Or you could say, they
Mhm,
have a gift. I'm going to lean into it.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Such a good reminder. Well, you have this wonderful theme that everyone is now remembering and hopefully writing down to bring in the delight, the storytelling, and that will lead to the connection. But you've
Mhm.
also helped to curate and you're giving
Yeah,
them help to co-create this story
yeah.
together. This is what you do at Restory. So tell us about both your games and how couples can connect with you or individuals in other ways.
Yeah. So there are a number of ways to find us.
Mhm.
So at Restory, we offer counseling, we offer story work coaching, we offer spiritual direction, we offer intensives. So lots of things there,
Ooh.
both for individuals and marriages that can be found at restory.life. As far as like marriage goes, we also offer these like curated dates that you can find. And so you can find those online. It's going to give you 12 curated dates. And that's it's through Restory. And I think I sent you the link.
Yeah.
So I may have to
Yep, I got
actually,
those.
I can't remember like the whole URL for that one.
Yeah, I'll be sharing that in
Find
the
us
show notes.
there and you can sign up, and those dates are going to get just delivered to your email. There's no charge. I mean, I think it's important and we value it. And so we're putting it out there as something that we just want to offer to couples.
I didn't know
Um,
that. I didn't know it was
yeah,
free.
yeah. It's just a resource that we want to make available for people. So, so you can find us there. You can get the date nights. That's, go get them. They're there and they're good. And then, yeah, you can find us on Instagram also. So we're there, and the Restory Instagram offers we offer some tips and, things that we're offering, introductions to all of our team that works for us. So I think that's a great resource. And then for people that just you're interested in me and you've heard
Yes.
some of my story, you can find me at Seeds by Hope. So that's my Instagram. You
Oh.
can find it there. So
Oh, this is just such a wealth of knowledge, and I loved your writing as well, that I was able to find your blog, and so we can
oh
share that as
yeah.
well if you'd like.
Yes, yes, absolutely. So there's lots of things, lots of resources, story-driven
Mm.
experiences and retreats and spaces to share your story for women offered at redtentliving.com.
Okay, thank you, and thank you for bringing such life-giving refreshment to us in our marriages today.
Oh
So
gosh.
appreciate you, Tracy.
Oh, and thank you, Krista. And thank you for the website. I love all things Enneagram. So I love like how you've taken it and you're really like giving couples so many great resources and practical stories and just ways to feel, I think, a little less crazy,
Yes, that's what it's all about.
Okay. All
Nailed it.
right. I'm normal. There are other people out there like us. So thank
Yay.
you too. And thanks for having me on. I
That's
appreciate
so
it.
wonderful. We can find each other. Okay, thank you,
Yeah.
Tracy.
All right.
Bye-bye. You guys, thank you so much for spending time with Tracy and I today. It is such a journey that we're all on. And as you saw, we truly are aware that it is not easy all the time to take that step towards your spouse when you're so tempted to turn the other direction and run. But you know what? We are here to stay and play together, as Tracy taught us today. And I think that was a really good word. So let's do that. Let's come back for more learning soon. And don't forget to check out all Tracy has for you at her websites. And of course, you don't want to miss your freebie with the 12 special dates that she and her husband have curated for you so you can begin to co create together. And we'll see you back here soon for more intimacy making, and talk to you then. Bye bye.